There is a reason hard work sometimes feels honest yet unrewarded, why effort can drain you instead of shaping your future, and why persistence alone does not guarantee progress. Somewhere beneath your routines lives a quiet discipline most overlook, and ignoring it keeps effort busy, exhausted, and strangely disconnected from success. You may have sensed it already. That subtle friction between what you do and what you achieve. You wake with intention, you move with purpose, yet something inside feels misaligned, not broken, not weak, simply unfocused. This is where the real struggle begins, long before results appear or disappear. The unseen battle is always mental. Every day, thought moves before action. It sets the tone. It decides direction. And yet, most people never take command of it. They let yesterday's fears whisper into today. They let habit speak louder than vision. Over time, this quiet surrender becomes normal, and effort loses its edge. Your mind is not passive. It is always shaping, always interpreting, always directing energy somewhere. When that direction is unclear, effort scatters. That when it is conflicted, effort cancels itself. You may move quickly, but you move in circles. You may try harder, but you carry resistance within. Awareness is the first disruption of this pattern. Not surface awareness, but the deeper kind. The moment you notice how often your thoughts contradict your goals, how frequently doubt sneaks in disguised as realism, how easily delay pretends to be patience. These moments reveal the truth. The mind has been trained, but not trained deliberately. Mental conditioning happens whether you choose it or not. Every repeated thought leaves an imprint. Every emotional reaction strengthens a pathway. Over time, these patterns operate automatically. They decide what feels possible. They decide what feels dangerous. And most importantly, they decide how much effort you believe is worth giving. This is why two people can apply the same energy and receive different outcomes. One moves from inner alignment. The other moves from inner conflict. One acts with quiet certainty. The other acts while arguing with themselves. The difference is invisible, but its effects are absolute. You cannot outwork an undisciplined mind. You cannot force success through a system that is internally divided. The effort may be real, but the command behind it is unclear. And without clear command, energy leaks. The mind must be governed before life can be directed. This governance is not control in the harsh sense. It is selection. Choosing which thoughts are allowed to stay long enough to shape belief. Choosing which internal voices are trusted. Choosing what you repeatedly return to when no one is watching. Most people wait for motivation to lead them, but motivation follows belief, not the other way around. Belief follows repetition, and repetition follows what you allow yourself to think consistently. This is where discipline quietly enters. Not as force, but as fidelity to inner order. Inner conflict feels like fatigue, like confusion, like effort without satisfaction. Inner alignment feels calm, focused, quietly powerful. When thought and intention agree, action gains weight. It carries direction. It begins to compound. This is not something you fix once. It is something you notice, then refine. Awareness sharpens. You begin to catch the moment a limiting thought tries to settle. You begin to feel when effort is about to be wasted on inner resistance instead of outer creation. The discipline rule that turns effort into success does not begin with action. It begins with command, with the decision that your inner world will no longer operate by default, that your thoughts will not roam unchecked, that what repeats within you must serve where you are going. This realization does not arrive loudly. It arrives with clarity, with the understanding that effort obeys belief and belief obeys, and until thought is disciplined, Effort will always feel heavier than it needs to be. Once awareness has been awakened, you begin to notice something subtle and unavoidable. Thought does not appear randomly. It follows grooves already carved. It returns to familiar ground even when that ground no longer serves you. This is where the deeper work quietly waits. Your subconscious is not persuaded by logic or intention. It responds to what is repeated, what is emotionally charged, what feels dominant. It listens without judgment and accepts without question. Whatever thought visits most often eventually becomes law within you. This is why change feels difficult at first. Not because transformation is unnatural, but because repetition has already trained the inner world to expect sameness. The mind prefers the known, even when the known is limiting. It prefers familiar struggle over unfamiliar growth. Every habit of thought is a silent instruction. Each time you rehearse doubt, the subconscious receives a message of uncertainty. Each time you revisit fear, it learns avoidance. Each time you dwell on inadequacy, it accepts that as identity. This is not punishment, it is obedience. The subconscious does not resist you. It serves you faithfully, but it serves whatever you consistently present. This is the quiet power most people never realize they hold. They speak to themselves all day long, yet they never choose the message. Repetition is the great sculptor of character, not dramatic moments, not occasional inspiration. What you return to daily shapes what you become. A thought repeated becomes familiar, familiar becomes believable, believable becomes natural, and what feels natural becomes destiny. This process happens whether you are aware of it or not. That is why discipline must move inward before it ever expresses outwardly. If the inner environment is disordered, effort will be consumed correcting emotional drag instead of creating progress. You may have noticed how certain thoughts arise automatically. You did not invite them. They arrive already formed. These are the results of past repetition. Old conclusions echoing forward. Old decisions asking to be renewed. And if left unchallenged, they will continue to program tomorrow. This is where quiet authority begins. Not by fighting thought, but by refusing to dwell. By noticing repetition and interrupting it gently but firmly. You do not need to argue with every thought. You only need to decide which ones earn your attention. The subconscious learns through feeling. When a thought is accompanied by emotion, it deepens its imprint. Worry strengthens worry. Gratitude strengthens confidence. Calm strengthens clarity. Emotion is the language the inner mind understands. Most effort fails because it is driven by mixed emotional signals. Desire paired with doubt, ambition paired with fear, action paired with hesitation. The subconscious receives conflicting instructions and responds with resistance. But when repetition becomes aligned, something shifts. The inner world begins to cooperate. Thought feels less noisy. Action feels less forced. You begin to sense a quiet momentum building beneath the surface. This is not optimism. It is conditioning. You are training the mind to expect direction instead of chaos. You are teaching it what to normalize. And what becomes normal soon becomes automatic. The greatest discipline is consistency of inner message, not perfection, not intensity, simply consistency. Returning again and again to thoughts that support where you are going. Letting them settle. Letting them become familiar. Letting them become yours. Over time, you notice effort changing quality. It no longer feels like pushing against yourself. It feels like moving with yourself. The inner friction softens. Energy gathers. Focus sharpens. This is the invisible work behind all visible mastery. Before a life becomes ordered, the mind must become patterned. Before success becomes stable, belief must become habitual, and belief is born through repetition. You are always programming yourself. The only question is whether you are doing it deliberately or by default. Once this is seen, the path forward becomes simpler, though never careless. And in that simplicity, a deeper certainty begins to form. Not yet faith, but readiness for it. The ground is being prepared, the inner soil turned. What you consistently plant now will decide what grows later. As repetition reshapes the inner landscape, something quieter begins to emerge. Not excitement, not confidence in the loud sense. Something steadier, a feeling that does not rush or demand proof. This is the early presence of faith, and it arrives only when thought has been given order. Faith is not wishful thinking. It is not a hope thrown into uncertainty. It is a settled inner knowing, formed slowly through emotionalized thought. When an idea has been repeated enough and felt deeply enough, it no longer asks for permission. It becomes assumed. It becomes the ground you stand on. The mind does not move toward what it merely wants. It moves toward what it believes is already possible. This belief is not chosen in a single moment. It is cultivated. It is built the same way doubt is built, through repetition, attention, and emotional weight. At first, aligned thoughts may feel unfamiliar. They may feel quiet compared to old inner arguments. But with time, they grow familiar, and familiarity breeds certainty. The subconscious begins to respond differently. It no longer resists direction. It begins to anticipate it. This is the moment effort starts to feel lighter, not because the work has changed, but because resistance has softened. Faith removes friction. It aligns emotion with intention. When thought and feeling agree, action gains power. Great thinkers throughout history understood this without naming it. They spoke of inner conviction, of certainty before evidence, of calm assurance in the midst of uncertainty. They were not speaking of arrogance. They were speaking of faith as an inner state. This state cannot be forced. It must be grown. And it grows only where thought has been disciplined enough to repeat what serves instead of what distracts. Faith is what remains when doubt is no longer rehearsed. Emotion is the catalyst. When a thought is felt, not just considered, it anchors. A thought felt repeatedly becomes belief. Belief becomes expectation. Expectation quietly directs behavior, choices, and perception. This is why belief shapes reality, not magically, but mechanically. You notice opportunities aligned with what you expect. You act differently when you assume success is possible. You persist calmly instead of anxiously. The outer world responds to inner posture. Faith brings patience, not passive waiting, but steady endurance. When belief is secure, there is no urgency to prove. Action becomes deliberate. Effort becomes consistent. You no longer rush toward outcomes. You move toward them. This is where many turn back, because faith feels subtle. It does not announce itself. It does not thrill the senses. It stabilizes them. It replaces emotional swings with emotional balance. Once faith is present, discipline takes on a new role. It is no longer about forcing yourself forward. It becomes about protecting what has been built within, guarding the inner atmosphere, maintaining clarity, preserving certainty. You become more selective, less reactive. You begin to sense which thoughts weaken faith and which strengthen it. You choose accordingly, not harshly, but firmly. This inner certainty does not eliminate challenge. It eliminates confusion. You may still face resistance, but you no longer doubt direction. You may still work hard, but the work no longer feels scattered. Faith is the bridge between thought and character. It is the moment belief becomes embodied. When what you think and what you feel no longer conflict, identity begins to shift. You are no longer trying to become something. You are beginning to act from something, and that difference changes everything. This is the quiet turning point, the moment when inner work begins to show in outer calm, when effort feels purposeful, when direction feels secure, and when discipline is ready to deepen into when faith has settled into the inner world, discipline takes on its truest form. No longer a struggle against impulse, it becomes self-command, quiet, certain, unargued. You begin to notice that your decisions carry less debate. Your actions follow intention without friction. This is inner authority being established. Discipline at this level is not about doing more. It is about doing what aligns and refusing what does not. It is definiteness of purpose expressed through daily conduct. When purpose is clear, discipline feels natural. When purpose is vague, discipline feels heavy. The mind obeys clarity. When you know where you are going inwardly, the outer path organizes itself. Choices simplify. Distractions lose their pull. You no longer need to constantly motivate yourself because motivation has been replaced by direction. This is where many misunderstand discipline. They see it as restriction, when in truth it is liberation. It frees you from internal negotiation. It ends the endless cycle of deciding and redeciding. Once the inner command is set, action follows without resistance. Definiteness of purpose is not a goal written down. It is a decision lived out. It is the steady agreement between thought, feeling, and action. When these three align, effort becomes efficient. Energy stops leaking into doubt. Self-command means you no longer wait for mood or circumstance to decide your behavior. You act from principle, not emotion. Emotions are acknowledged, but they are no longer in charge. The inner authority has shifted. This authority is built through consistent obedience to your chosen direction. Each time you follow through, the mind learns trust. Each time you delay without reason, it learns uncertainty. The subconscious records every act as evidence. Over time, discipline creates identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone whose word carries weight, even internally. This self-image becomes self-reinforcing. Action supports belief. Belief supports action. Effort now serves purpose instead of questioning it. Work feels grounded. Progress feels steady. There is less need to compare or rush because direction has replaced anxiety. You become calm in decision, calm in execution, calm in waiting when waiting is required. This calm is not passivity. It is control. The control that comes from inner order. Those who master this state appear unshakable, not because they avoid difficulty, but because they are not divided within. They do not waste energy arguing with themselves. Their strength is economical. Discipline at this level is invisible to others. It shows up as consistency, reliability, and quiet progress. But its true power is internal. It stabilizes the mind. It protects faith. It sustains momentum. You begin to notice that effort no longer exhausts you as it once did, because it is no longer fighting resistance inside. It is moving through a clear channel. This is the discipline rule most ignore. That discipline must first command the inner world before it can shape the outer one. Without this, effort remains effort. With it, effort becomes inevitability. As inner authority solidifies, something profound begins to happen. You stop trying to change your life. You begin living from a changed center. Identity shifts not by declaration, but by habit. And when identity shifts, destiny follows naturally. At this stage, change no longer feels like effort. It feels like expression. You are not forcing yourself into a new life. You are allowing what has been formed within to move outward. The struggle that once defined your progress has quietly dissolved, replaced by a steady sense of authorship over your direction. Transformation is not a dramatic event. It is a gradual recognition. You notice that you think differently under pressure. You respond differently to delay. You move with calm certainty where you once hesitated. These are not techniques. They are signs of an identity that has reorganized itself. You are no longer driven by bursts of intensity. You are guided by inner law. Thought, once scattered, now moves with purpose. Faith, once fragile, now rests quietly in the background, unquestioned. Discipline, once resisted, now feels like alignment. This is mental mastery, not domination, but harmony. The mind has learned its role. It no longer disrupts direction with doubt or distraction. It supports direction with clarity and consistency. You become aware of a simple truth. The outer world has not changed its rules. Cause still produces effect. Effort still requires time. But you have changed the cause. You have ordered the inner environment from which all effects flow. Success now appears less mysterious, less emotional. It becomes a natural outcome of inner structure. When the mind is ordered, action follows with precision. When action is precise, results accumulate without strain. You no longer chase certainty, you embody it. You no longer seek validation, you act from conviction. There is a quiet dignity in this state, a sense of self-trust that does not need reinforcement. This is the calm certainty that marks those who understand timeless law. They do not rush. They do not retreat. They move steadily, knowing that inner order will always express itself outwardly in time. Identity has shifted from striving to being, from hoping to knowing, from efforting to directing, and this shift changes how life responds to you. You are not exempt from challenge, but you are no longer shaped by it. Difficulty becomes information, not threat. Delay becomes refinement, not failure. Everything is processed through inner command. This is the final return, not to something new, but to something that was always present. The recognition that the mind, when disciplined, becomes a faithful servant. That faith, when cultivated, becomes unshakable ground. That effort, when aligned, becomes success in motion. The law is simple and eternal. What you consistently think, you become. What you become, you express, and what you express returns to you in form. There is nothing dramatic left to do, nothing to force. The work has already been done where it matters most. The rest unfolds in its own time. This is the quiet power that never fades, the certainty that does not need proof, the mastery that feels like peace. And once known, it is never lost.